Saito is a microcap that is solving the biggest issues facing crypto today, but they kind of are no more issues than they are actual principles, and they fundamentally uphold this entire industry, setting guidelines for leaders to follow or, of course, striving to reach. Now, stop for a second and think if the words decentralization, fairness, openness, security, self-sufficiency, and transactions per second ring a bell to you. Well, I'm going to kind of confidently take a guess here and say that you're probably nodding your head right now, because they're essentially synonymous with the word cryptocurrency at this point. Now, some very well-known leaders in this very space have continued to promise you that these principles have been successfully addressed in their projects, but in most cases they actually aren't, and in some they just never will be. Now, I believe a majority of crypto's biggest projects have essentially profited from incompetence and smoke and mirrors, smearing the words "trust us" all over your eyes. And kind of what I mean by this is that I don't believe many cryptocurrencies are truly sustainable, scalable, and leaderless networks that can actually follow these principles against the test of time, or even be functioning in the next 10 years. They almost all do suffer from an incentivization problem that is basically the root cause of most of the issues I mentioned earlier, but not Saito. Saito is a layer 1 blockchain that is truly abiding by these principles without cramming new algorithms or developments in cryptography atop existing infrastructure. Saito has been built from the very ground up to primarily focus on incentivization first, allowing the network to conquer many of those principles from a new lens, overcoming boundaries like the scalability trilemma, whilst creating a sustainable, scalable, and leaderless network. But I'm challenging you right now to take a punt and give me 20 minutes to explain how this undervalued gem really works and how you, of course, can profit from it. But please go ahead and use the timestamps provided to jump ahead at any time. Now, if you'd like to jump into my price prediction on Saito, then you can watch that video by pressing the link up here. Of course, it's out there right now and available. Now, the very first thing is you need to know how the protocol works on a technology level. Up. Do not worry. I wouldn't skip ahead if I were you, because we aren't going to be going full geek mode here. Just the basics. As I mentioned earlier, Saito was built from the very ground up with a focus on incentivization at both the protocol and economic level. Incentivization means realigning a node's desire to focus on their self-interests to focus on the benefits of the network, in turn allowing it to be extremely fair with insane levels of security, decentralization, scalability, and most importantly, something that's never talked about, storage. The network is completely permissionless and self-sufficient, meaning it's designed to operate on its own in perpetuity, just like Bitcoin would, and unlike popular commercial networks that require a governing council or constant monitoring by a foundation. Now, given the protocol's incredible foundations, Saito's team have pretty much begun working on a completely peer-to-peer Web3 experience called Red Square, with a working community chat, arcade games, and guess this, a video chat that is actually usable right now. Saito is currently in the testnet phase, which is incredible, seeing as the network has over 20 million transactions and 17,000 holders, signaling that we can look forward to insane growth potential when the mainnet does launch. Now, if you're wondering when, well, we currently have no idea. However, there is a 4-phase rollout roadmap, which gives us some time to that actual event. Now, as seen in this article written by Saito co-founder David Lankshire, in November of last year, we were actually already in the 2nd phase, with another 1.5 years before we're actually in the 3rd phase, meaning we do have quite a bit of time to accumulate the Saito token. Now, I must admit, I'm going to give you a fair warning here, because Saito does actually get a little bit complicated, because it does fundamentally redesign how blockchains function. So it's kind of hard to go into it without sort of touching on a few little complicated topics. I know I kind of said I wasn't going to a moment ago, but hopefully you guys can understand. I'll be taking it quite high level anyway, so you can kind of then go ahead and explain it to friends and family. Now, let's begin. So at the beating heart of the network lies its unique consensus algorithm called Saito Consensus. This novel algorithm actually combines properties of both the proof of work and proof of stake algorithms to create a completely fair, and sustainable peer-to-peer structure, ensuring nodes are fairly rewarded for the work that they contribute. Now, it's powered by two types of nodes. We have routing nodes and we have miner nodes. Let's start with routing nodes. So these guys are pretty much the point of contact between the end user and the Saito network, and are actually tasked with collecting all types of transactions and then propagating them to the remainder of the network, which is called routing work. Now, users pick which routing nodes their transactions actually go to, and routing nodes get paid more when users choose to send their money to them. Now, this incentivizes routing nodes to provide whatever network services the users are demanding from them, whether that's faster confirmation times, cheaper fees, or pretty much the building of new applications, and even donating part of their revenue to a worthy cause. Anything's possible, okay? So you'll actually find routing nodes catering to very specific purposes, becoming synonymous with dApps or services where they know that they'll actually be utilized the most. Now, Saito rewards these nodes for being as close to the source of the transaction as possible, so they have pretty much a greater chance of producing blocks. Yes, you heard me right. Routing nodes produce the blocks and not the miners. Now, I'm not going to go into kind of any deeper details because it does begin to send you down a very, very deep rabbit hole that we just do not have time for. Although, two things that you really do need to know is that Saito's block reward consists entirely of transaction fees and not separate rewards specifically for creating the actual block itself, which does tend to create an inflationary status for other networks. So hopefully, if you didn't know that, there's something new there. Now, the other is that routing nodes actually don't receive fees when they actually produce the block. Rather, the fees that have accumulated in the block are burned when the block is produced, yes, you heard me right, and then can only be reinstated if the miners correctly solve a mathematical equation called the golden ticket. Aside from broadcasting the block to the network, this is the miner's sole job. But it is extremely important, as solving the equation and adding that solution to the equation into the next block is the only way that transaction fees are released for reward. Otherwise, just simply no one is paid for their work. Now, if the solution is found and added to the next block, the miner who found this golden ticket receives a proportionate amount of tokens based on its hash power compared to the network, while the remaining tokens are rewarded to a random router node based on how directly they attracted high value user transactions to that specific block. This means the router nodes may actually produce the block, but it doesn't mean that they'll actually be paid for that block either, even if they statistically contribute the most amount of work. Now, over time, a router node definitely will get paid proportionally to how much it does contribute overall, so I've obviously got to say that. Now, I really do like this infographic you can see right now. I found when reading the greatest Saito breakdown I could literally find on the internet, written by a guy called Square. Now, I haven't been able to discuss the details that I would typically like to in this video because obviously these videos have a time limit, but Square breaks Saito down perfectly, and I should know because I had to actually use his article to help me with the content in this video. So it's a long read, I must admit, but trust me when I say it is 100% worth it. Now, the network technically has an infinite transaction speed because of the way blocks are created in the consensus process. Blocks aren't required to have a limit, and each router node can manipulate the block size and propagation of the transactions based on the needs of the end user and also their own profitability. Now, the security of the network is actually extremely high because it is designed to be impossible to hack without the attacker sustaining the higher loss. Now, part of the reason is because blocks are only created when routing nodes have accrued a threshold of work from processing the transactions. They are then paid based on a percentage of the total amount of work for that specific block, which means if they produced 90% of the work, they still might not get rewarded. Now, you've got to remember that creating a block and being paid are now no longer synonymous. Miners are also actually not paid until they've expended money, aka pretty much computational energy, to find that golden ticket I was talking about a moment ago. Comparatively, in a proof of stake or proof of work network, all that is required is 51% of the stake or hash power, and you're almost always guaranteed to create the next block, and therefore you've overcome the security threshold of the network. Another reason Saito Consensus is so secure is because Unlike proof of work and proof of stake, a majority attacker can't take away work from other nodes since work is associated with the individual transactions which nodes collect. For kind of more technical reasons, this prevents an attacker excluding other transactions from the chain with a 51% attack. Decentralization is also optimized because Saito doesn't have to counter volunteers like other networks. The nodes on Saito are paid for contributing resources to the network and can therefore achieve greater decentralization as they are incentivized to stay when operational costs obviously increase. Interoperability is also unlike any other because Saito is able to leverage the routing nodes to process transactions that come from other networks and not just end users already using Saito or Saito related applications. Saito can kind of therefore be used as an infrastructure layer to release congestion on other networks or pretty much reroute transactions past third-party services like Infura for networks like Ethereum. Now this is also where Saito's layer 2 infrastructure comes into the mix. Saito will be able to support the Ethereum virtual machine and can therefore accept transactions from any EVM compatible network. Plus, since a Saito transaction can be infinitely large, rather than an NFT project congesting a network on mint day, many hundreds of transactions can actually be sent to Saito in a single transaction. Now, finally, I would like to briefly mention the blockchain design that ensures the network will be able to scale to infinity and beyond, particularly storage. Saito is a blockchain, however, it's not a blockchain that continues to grow in a straight line. The blockchain actually prunes itself after a period of time called an epoch, which is decided upon by the network itself. Let's just say the network deems an epoch is 10,000 blocks in length. On the 10,001st block, the first block will actually fall off the network and the transactions will be made unspendable. Upon making a transaction on Saito, there is a fee that can be paid to allow transactions to be rebroadcasted back into the network and placed into a block that force it off the network. Now, in this instance, transactions from block 1 that have paid this fee would be rebroadcasted back into block 10,001, while those that haven't just simply remain unspendable. This system is called automatic transaction rebroadcasting and allows the network to stay within a fixed length, which actually means storage costs now become quantifiable, meaning that you can know what they actually are. By creating these epochs, the actual network can then put a price on data that is stored on chain and ignore unnecessary data like simple transactions. This is actually an extremely attractive feature that other networks are having to implement long after Genesis or just rely on third parties like Filecoin or IPFS. But either way, I believe Saito has one of, if not the best solution to the storage crisis, as it's capable of handling storage from other networks as well. Okay, so everything I have explained to you so far doesn't even scratch the surface of the magic that Saito offers Web3. However, I do hope that you have a basic understanding of the gravity of Saito. If not, the beauty of YouTube, just hit the rewind button. Now, the incredible thing is that the network is so young that it's not currently known by many, which is why I think demand will come when mainnet is launched. I actually truly do believe that if Satoshi Nakamoto were around, he, she, or they would have approved of Saito's design, as the core principles are very similar to Bitcoin's. Overall, guys, rating the technicals out of 10, of course, they're getting a 10 out of 10 here.
So here's the thing, while I always love to bring positive reviews, I am crypto ethics, and therefore complete honesty and transparency is required. So I found good things, I found some bad things, and I'm going to tell you all of it right now. The founders of Saito, David Lancashire and Richard Paris, started the Saito journey in 2017 when they realized that the crypto industry needed a new kind of economic model. The other team members who joined later can be seen on screen now. Saito's ecosystem is heavily gaming related, consisting of the Saito Arcade alongside a chat application and a video call app. Together, they form a small community. Actually, Saito and Elrond, now known as Metaverse X, partnered back in 2021, which is something very interesting. The only thing I don't know is if they are still working together now. But the partnership was never cancelled, so I assume that they are. As far as other partnerships go, back in 2021 there were a few others, including Stack OS and Mixin Networks. The consistent thing here being that the partnerships were during the bull market, which is when most partnerships and expansion does happen. This means we will have to wait and see how Saito performs in regards to new partnerships in the following bull run. Saito's reach is far less extensive than that of a larger cryptocurrency like Polkadot, so I won't be making a map for today. But I can tell you the investors and backers. They are shown here, the most notable ones being NGC and Signum Capital. NGC is notable because it has connections to Algorand and Reserve RSR. In fact, I believe Lotus Capital also backs RSR, but that may be a different Lotus. Anyway, none of that is the bad stuff I mentioned before, so let's get to my concerns that make me hesitant to jump onto the Saito ship. Before founding Saito, David Lancashire founded another company called Proclus Technology. The company is virtually invisible in the sense that there is no information on who works there, how successful it is, and if it has partnerships. It has listings on sales websites like Alibaba for their hardware tech, but I can't find any confirmation of bigger sales partners. It's hard to confirm because this does happen with hardware tech companies. They often supply other larger companies, but that information isn't really publicly available. Considering that 3 of the Saito team members, including the founder, came from this company previously, it is important that Proclus Tech is a successful company because that tells us what the future looks like for Saito. I can't confirm without more information. Saito is also listed as a sub-organization to Proclus Tech, but this could be an error. That's one of my concerns. The other one involves one of Saito's advisors, Jack Liu. Jack has had very extensive roles in the past, such as Director of Circle's operations in Asia, and a role at the BSV Foundation, Bitcoin Satoshi Vision. Anyway, Jack Liu has been completely off the radar for more than a year and a half since he deleted his Twitter account. From what I have searched online, it seems like there has been nothing happening with him since that point in time. Simply put, I'd like confirmation from Jack on his work with Saito, because without that, it's impossible to tell what's going on. I mentioned the Bitcoin Satoshi Vision Foundation. Well, it's interesting because Jack coming from one of those foundations would actually make sense, considering that Saito's tech, from what I've heard, can be compared to Bitcoin and BSV. In many ways, it is an extension of that kind of payment technology. Other than that, I would just say a bit more information on their other advisors too. The situation with Jack is also similar for Charlie. So for today, I'm going to give Saito a 3 out of 10 on the rating. It may sound harsh, but it's better to be harsh and leave room for improvement than be soft and leave room for error. However, with that said, Saito is much more technology and fundamental focused. The partnerships in the ecosystem rating doesn't really matter as much as the other ones do for this crypto. Overall, Saito could benefit from more clarity and extending their partnerships, but it doesn't really need to if the main focus is simply to bring more advanced technology and wait for people to catch on.
Thanks for that no BS breakdown, Gabe. Alright guys, now it is time to take a brief look into the fundamentals. The market cap of Saito is currently a very minuscule $27 million according to CoinGecko, meaning it is in microcap territory. The maximum supply of Saito tokens that will ever exist is 10 billion, with a current total supply of only 3 billion. Now the current 2.2 billion tokens in circulation actually accumulates to about 22% of the max supply. This is, believe it or not, for a very good reason though, as Saito has a unique token distribution which you're going to see on your screen now. The red section represents transferable wrapped versions of the native Saito token, split between ERC20 and BEP20 standards, simply meaning that you can buy wrapped Saito tokens on Ethereum and the Binance Smart Chain. These wrapped tokens make up the 3 billion in the total supply and are the only tokens that are actually transferable right now. The yellow portion represents the remaining 7 billion tokens, which are the native Layer 1 Saito tokens. Since mainnet is currently unreleased, these tokens are temporarily unusable. However, you can convert to them with either wrapped token standards. Now, splitting the tokens in this way was actually quite smart because it allows users to accumulate the Saito tokens on the open market before mainnet, which further decentralizes the token supply. What it also does is actually allows users to easily transfer the Saito token on DeFi applications to other networks which accept the ERC20 and BEP20 standards. Once the mainnet is live, you can expect the native Saito tokens to be used for staking, transaction, fees and governance, plus additional use cases that do end up coming with the development of the network and its services. All funding rounds, which include the seed and private sale rounds, have their tokens unlocked into the red category, while the core team rewards and strategic partners have their tokens strictly unlocked into the native Saito token. The community-controlled foundation and contributors/developers have a majority of their tokens unlocking into the native token, while 3% and 2% respectively are unlocked in the transferable wrapped tokens. As I'm recording this in April of 2023, all wrapped red tokens are actually vested, with the remaining non-circulating supply consisting of tokens from the community-controlled foundation, contributors / developers, and likely some remaining in the treasury from unclaimed tokens in the IDO. Now, there are actually unofficial discussions around burning these tokens when the mainnet is live. At least this is the unclaimed IDO tokens I'm talking about, but we don't actually have any conclusive evidence of that. However, if so, this will actually mean around 275 million tokens will be removed from supply, so that'll be great for anyone holding SAITO tokens. In a recent blog post, David indicates that the project has enough funding to continue operations for at least another 2 years from the date of recording, with Richard Paris, Saito's other co-founder, transparently summarizing what their monthly expenditure is back in June of last year. Now, the transparency from the team combined with their tokens unlocking in the mainnet standard shows the dedication the team has to the community and, of course, the project at large. Now, on the other hand, there aren't that many developers currently working on SAITO, indicated in the same blog post from David back in September of 2022. There are currently 7 developers working on the project, including David and Richard, which is quite concerning because phase 2 of the roadmap won't be complete for another 1.5 years or so. If you consider the 4th roadmap phase, it seems SAITO may require the selling of their foundation and or developer tokens to support the continuation of the project. It kind of is hard to say from my point of view if this will or won't happen, as we're just talking about very uncertain times right now, but just be aware. Given the outstanding transparency from the team, I honestly would very confidently assume that there would be a handful of notifications from the team before any selling of their tokens occurs. And just remember, guys, these are the red tokens selling here, not the yellow tokens, okay? So it is only a portion of the overall amount. It's maximum 500 million tokens that they could possibly ever spend. Now, I give the tokenomics a 7 out of 10 simply because the investors hold most of the circulating supply tokens, and really the public sale rounds only have about 1% up their belt, which isn't all that much. I do obviously expect that this 1% does inflate to possibly no more than 5% at the time of mainnet, simply because I expect some of the venture capital investors actually selling some of their tokens, but you can't obviously predict any of that. And just before I give you my overall score, I would like to mention that I am interviewing David, one of Saito's co-founders, so please leave me any questions you may have for him down below. I want to say for the record, that hasn't changed my score of Saito at all, as you're about to see. Now look, accounting for Gabriel's score for the ecosystem and my 2 ratings, the average of the 3 comes to about a 7 out of 10, so that is my overall score for Saito. And look, guys, on that note, this does conclude the Saito breakdown. Thank you so much for watching right through the very end, and I really do hope to see you all soon. If you've liked this video, please support the channel, like, subscribe, and let me know what you think down below. All that said, guys, have a great day. Talk to you then.